From our studio at Adesawe Kanda here in Accra, Tamale, we're live on Kesmi 107.1 FM. If you can hear us in White on W93.5 around the world, we're streaming live on 3news.com. Download the TuneIn app from the Google Play or Apple iOS store and listen to us on the go. Coming up this afternoon, Upper East Regional Coordinating Council bans slaughtering and movement of livestock in 6 districts over anthrax outbreak, resulting in the suspected loss of a life. We get details for you as vaccination of livestock begins in earnest. This afternoon, we hear from authorities on how they are enforcing the ban and measures to curtail the spread of the deadly virus. Also this afternoon, Chief Justice nominee Gertrude Tokono to be approved by consensus despite reservations by the minority side of the Appointments Committee over her role in annulling the Asin North elections. The NDC MPs say her CV proves she is competent to man the position, hence their support. Parliament, meanwhile, is reconvening today with key bills up for consideration, including the controversial anti-LGBT bill plus the bill seeking to repeal the dual citizenship law. On that basis, US-based Ghanaian lawyer Professor Kwekwa Sare, he's called on Parliament to repeal Articles 94, 2 and 8 of the 1992 Constitution in wake of the written judgment of the Supreme Court on the Jachi Kwesian ruling, further stating that the judges veered into the realm of politics.
Parliament, that is politics. That has nothing to do with jurisprudence.
We have details of these stories if you stay with us for the next 30 minutes. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta. The bulletin is streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927. Same handles on Twitter 3FM 927. Let's get into the details now, because the Upper East Regional Coordinating Council has banned the slaughtering of livestock following the confirmation of the anthrax virus in 2 districts of the region. The movement of goats, sheep, pigs, cattle and dogs have also been restricted with immediate effect. This comes as animal samples from the affected communities of Banse in Binduri and Sape Lega in the Bokuwas district tested positive for the deadly anthrax. As a result, no animal will be allowed to leave the following areas. That's the Boku municipality: Boku West, Pusiga, Garu, Timpani and Binduri. The police have been directed to arrest persons or group of persons who flout the directive, while veterinary services officers are to commence anthrax vaccination of animals. Let's get the very latest. Dr. Benjamin Sasu is a risk communications officer of the Ghana Veterinary Services Directorate. From there, he's joined us on the telephone line with some more details. So, Doc, let's start with a bit of education in terms of the severity of the outbreak in part of the Upper East region. What's the situation as we speak?
Thank you very much. Currently, the situation is under control as we speak. There's been an emergency risk communication meeting which I was on before this call to take an update of what has been done and to re-strategize to get some of our work that we are doing improved so that we could fully contain this issue as soon as possible. And since the record of one person dying, we haven't had anyone yet. And that is good for our side, and we are hoping we don't get any extra one dying from it. Those who have been affected, the Ghana Health Service is handling them. The samples have been taken from them, but they are being under monitor. They are making sure that you keep an eye on them and give them the necessary medical care that they need, so that they don't get the state of losing a life. Also, with the veterinary aspect, the Regional Coordinating Council, which leads the emergency committee in that region, has put a ban of movement of animals in that region. And their veterinary staff are looking to do a mass vaccination of ruminants in those areas, which has been announced to the people, put it down freely for them, so that all the animals over there who are tricks or they can be exposed will all be vaccinated, so to prevent further outbreak in the region. So the more we are getting outbreak, the more that they are going to have the chances of the bacteria or the spores being in the area, and the chances that people will be eating the carcass might be there. But we are trying to communicate to people that they're not.
Right. So this one person who's died, the confirmation is that they died from the anthrax bacteria.
Yes.
Now, in terms of the vaccination, I know it's been announced, and all cattle, sheep, dogs, and pigs are expected to be vaccinated. In what mode is this going to happen so as to cover the entire stretch of the Boko municipality?
Great. So, lucky for us in Ghana here, I want to talk about this vaccine. Ghana here, we produce it ourselves. Veterinary service for many years have been producing and had stock. So, as of Sunday, when this issue came about, the vaccine production, which is at Aborampah, the veterinary central veterinary lab, has stocked with the dispatch many of these vaccines to the region for vaccination to begin. So, veterinary officers will be on the ground, they move to those farms, districts. Already, some of the farmers, they do know them. And people will be, they'll give some contact lines in the region at their various local stations and at the community centers for people to call in for the vaccination to be done. If we read the message coming from the Regional Coordinating Council, they are pleading with all the residents to do well to adhere to the how to call it, the kind of guidelines that are put into it. If they still get somebody who is trying to go against, if they are keeping animals that need to vaccinate, we don't want to be done, it will be dealt with. Because once there's an outbreak, we're not in normal times, and we hope everybody do our best to cooperate so that the situation can be put under control.
Right. We know that there's a ban on the slaughtering of all of the animals as to prevent consumption. Is that the best way to go in terms of the current situation we have? I ask that because people will be seeking to get sources of protein and the likes, and I don't know about how well poultry does in the northern parts of the country, and so is that the surest way of ensuring that this doesn't continue to spread?
Great. So, lucky for it is one district within a region, and in the past 2 years, there's a Savannah investment program which was helping the people to raise poultry products. So that's what I'm aware. I've been, my people have always going there to meet them, emphasize them, and pick samples, which is also doing well. As it happens that the decision for ruminants not to be slaughtered, it's a good one because some of the animals may, as of now, may not be showing signs and symptoms. And who knows? So for now that we have put a ban, we will observe within 14 days or within some weeks to see whether it will have some animals to die again. After everybody has been vaccinated and have good immunity, and we are clearly out of this outbreak, there will be a chance. Lucky, there are nearby regions, there are nearby communities that will be supplying protein. I know in terms of economic activity in those areas of meat production will be hit hard for some time. That's all due to public health concerns. And when we all are there to be necessary protocol, I think we will come out of the situation. And normally, stopping animals, not all animals that are stopped in a particular place may be from that region or maybe in that place. So just that in nearby communities that may have brought it in will also be stopped on the way. So they will do it at the place that we have had said they should have them down.
Right.
And they will watch for safe transport to the place.
Right, and that's Dr. Benjamin Sasu. He's a risk communications officer of the Ghana Veterinary Services Directorate, speaking to us on what the situation is. Says that the 1 month ban is the best way to go at this particular point in time. We'll try and touch base in the area for you in the course of the bulletin and here on 3FM 92.7 to get a lot more details as to the individuals or the indigents who deal in livestock trade, what the situation is for them, because it's a 1 month long ban. You cannot cannot sell, the animals need to be vaccinated, you cannot slaughter. What will be the source of protein for these individuals going forward? Those are some of the questions we seek to get when we touch base on the ground. But let's move away from this into the realm of politics now, because the minority in Parliament says it will back the approval of Chief Justice nominee Gertrude Tokonu. The decision, according to the NDC MPs, is based on evidence of competence on the part of the nominee, despite reservations over her role in the recent Supreme Court judgment which affirmed the annulment of the 2020 Asin North parliamentary elections. The minority members on the appointment committee stood down their decision to approve of the nominee, insisting they would wait on the written judgment of the Apex Court. Speaking on behalf of the caucus, Mahama Ayariga said despite their reservations, they will not hold back on her appointment.
If even we admit that there should be some housekeeping matters at the point of filing nomination papers, that should be the appropriate province of legislation and not judicial enactment. What they did was to enact laws, the Supreme Court, not to interpret the text of the Constitution of Ghana. James Jachikwesin is gearing up to contest the by-election in Asin North, which has been brought about by the Supreme Court's decision. In that regard, we, the members of the Appointments Committee representing the National Democratic Congress, NDC, will not withhold our approval of the Chief Justice nominee by consensus. We will not withhold our approval of her by consensus. Her CV reveals a person of considerable experience, having served as a judge from the High Court to the Court of Appeal and ultimately at the Supreme Court. Women who have acquitted themselves should be given opportunities to occupy key national offices. Even as we disagree with her jurisprudence, we find her qualified to occupy the high office of Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. The image of the judiciary is not in a good shape. Several opinion polls show that, so we are not saying it. We hope that Justice Gertrude Araba, as a Lady Chief Justice, will restore the dignity of the judiciary.
So that's Mahama Ayariga, is a minority member on the Appointments Committee and a Boko Central MP, and was staying on this subject matter on the strand of the written judgment by the Supreme Court in relation to James Jachikwesin, because US-based Ghanaian lawyer Professor Kweku Asare is calling on the legislature to immediately repeal sections of the 1992 Constitution which bars dual citizens from contesting to become parliamentarians. It follows a release of the written judgment like we've been telling you about, and according to the lawyer, the Supreme Court veered into the realms of politics when it affirmed a High Court ruling annulling the election of the Asin North MP. He's been speaking to Alfred Okanse.
Jachikwesin qualified to run for MP, and in fact, the Electoral Commission itself is the one that wrote those regulations. They said he qualified. The Supreme Court is now coming in and is saying, well, we don't like what PNDC Law 284 is saying about the timing of allegiance. Therefore, we are going to set our own time. And not only are we going to set our own time, we are going to apply it retrospectively to disqualify this person from Parliament. That is politics. That has nothing to do with jurisprudence. Our citizens have skills. Our citizens have wealth, and so on and so forth. Many of them travel, and as a result of traveling, they acquire other citizenships. But if they come back with their wealth, and if they come back with their skills, we shouldn't insist that they renounce their citizenship of the other country. I would once again push that Parliament quickly repeals Article A2 and Article 94(2)A on grounds that I've explained elsewhere.
That's US-based Ghanaian lawyer Professor Kweku. Let's get on the telephone line now and speak to Ibrahim Amaleba. He's the Director of Legal Affairs of the opposition National Democratic Congress. Let's pick his thoughts, particularly on whether or not, based on the written judgment which they had longed for, they will seek a review of the ruling by the Apex Court. Mr. Amaleba, I appreciate that you could speak to us this afternoon. So you in the NDC had stated that any decision to review the judgment by the Supreme Court will be subject to having a look at the written judgment and then at the behest of the party. Does it look like, based on what you've seen, you will be seeking a review of the Supreme Court?
So, good afternoon to your listeners. Before this judgment came out yesterday, we had already filed an application at the Supreme Court seeking for extension of time to enable us review the decision. And so you realize that the rules require that you have 30 days within which to file your review. And so because of that, we have filed for extension because the judgment came just yesterday. So we don't have the full complement of the 30 days. And so this application will be moved on the 22nd of June for us to have the full complement of the 30 days to enable us file for a review. So this is what I can tell you that we have done so far from our end.
And so based on that, is it looking more and more likely? You've seen the judgment, and I want your thoughts on it as well, just briefly.
We have a number of challenges with the judgment. For instance, one, the judge or the court refused to deal with Section 20 of the People's Representation Act, which says that the time for qualification is at the time of election. How they arrive at the time for nomination is mind-boggling, because in Zenato's case, which they used, the Supreme Court attention was not averted to the PNDC law, which is 284, Section 20. But in this case, lawyers for Judge Jackson, Jim Quayson, had averted the Supreme Court's mind to Section 20 of the People's Representation Act. The question now is, why did the Supreme Court fail to deal with that law? Why didn't they analyze that law? Why did they dodge that law? So for us, that could be one reason why we will go for a review. There are two more others, but this is just one of the reasons.
And you don't want to give us the other reasons?
For the time, I can give you. The second one is that we think that it is wrong to say that the citizenship is and citizenship and this one allegiance are bound together, which means that if you say they are bound together, it means that they can be separated. And so we expected the Supreme Court to do an analysis, but to conveniently say that they are bound together and end it there, for us, it's not right. You need to do the analysis and let people know that they are two separate items, but you can bound them together and you can still separate them. That the Supreme Court didn't do. The third one has to do with the Supreme Court. What is the third one? That just escaped me. But there are three issues that I think that we can take for review.
Right then. So it's looking the more and more likely that you might decide to exercise that natural right you have. Many thanks for speaking to us this afternoon. That's Abraham Amadaba. He's the Director of Legal Affairs of the Opposition NDC, speaking to us this afternoon. And on that basis, the talk of the ruling by the Supreme Court in relation to the Asin North seat, we're taking you to Parliament because the House has been is today reconvening to, amongst many other things, consider key bills. Top of the agenda will include the anti-LGBT bill, which continues to stoke a lot of controversy. Even portions of it has been dragged to the Supreme Court for interpretation of a failure, the High Court rather, of a failure not to carry out a fiscal risk assessment on the bill. And we'll touch base with Komla Kluche, who's our parliamentary affairs correspondent, pretty shortly, who has a lot more details as to exactly what will be transpiring on the floor of the House. The Business Committee is expected to sit today and then decide as to whether or not the approval of the Chief Justice nominee, Gertrude Tokonu, would take place today. The Appointments Committee is expected to lay their reports on the plenary today. Now the minority says that they will support, and so it's looking the more and more like it will be approval by consensus. And so we'll be seeking to find out as well if that report will be laid on the floor of the House, and also what other bills to expect as Parliament reconvenes. It's been feisty in this particular session of Parliament, right from the passage of e-levy all through to approval of budgets and the likes. And so it'll be interesting to know what is on the plate of Parliament going into this latest sitting. But you're listening to the news here on 3FM 92.7. We're streaming live on Facebook. Our handles 3FM 927, as well as on Twitter, same handles 3FM 927. Now, the Ghana Police Service has been ordered by the RTI Commission to release a report of investigations on unlawful killing of some 11 individuals. The police service has subsequently been fined for its failure to respond to a right to information request by the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative Africa. The group was demanding from the police service under the Right to Information Act an official document providing update on the outcome of the investigations concerning the unlawful killing by the police in response to some 11 cases. Exactly what are the details of the report by the RTI Commission? Let's just walk you through bits and pieces of it. And so in terms of dealing with the matter, the RTI Commission makes the following orders: that in the circumstances of the case, since the requested pieces of information are not exempt information and that the applicant is entitled to be furnished same, the Commission hereby invokes the jurisdiction under Section 44 of the Act 989 to take appropriate action necessary to resolve the applicant's complaint. And amongst many other things, based on these provisions, they ordered that the Inspector General of Police shall ensure that the following pieces of information are released to the applicants not later but 14 days after receipt of the decision of the Commission: an official document providing update on the outcome of the investigation concerning the unlawful killing by police officers in respect of Norman Addo, which occurred in Atesamanso on January 21, 2012, Abdul Rashid, which occurred at Amakrom Goro, Asawase on October 9, 2013, Kweku Opon, which occurred at Asemwa close to Swami on March 2015, Osei Teria, which occurred at Nana Fudo Krofum on May 26, 2016, Mary Abuaji, which occurred at Ankafo Junction on the 10th of January 2019, Musa Seidu, which happened at Ayerebi Krom Manso, July 2018, Mohammed Bashir Musa, which occurred, Mohammed Kamal, which occurred at Ayebi Krom as well, same time, and then Razak Suke, aka Frenchman, also in July 17, 2018 at Ayebi Krom Manso, Abdul Haman Bashir, same town, July 17, 2018, and then an official document on update and outcome of investigations, amongst many other things. Let's take you to Parliament now for those updates from Parliamentary Affairs correspondent Komla Kluche, who's joined us on the telephone. Komla, walk us through the expectation of the House as it begins sitting today.
Well, not much is actually on the table. If you look at the order paper, but presumably, I mean, the most contentious issue now has to do with the approval of the Chief Justice nominee. That minority press conference that just happened a few minutes ago, it will play a long way, because before the press conference, the position of the minority was that they were not going to give their approval or otherwise until they see the Supreme Court judgment on the Egbeta thing, which up until yesterday they've had it, and their current position is the fact that they are not going to withhold it. They disagree with some of the things that she has said in the principles in which they come, but they are not going to deny her that opportunity. But they are expecting that she would go to the judiciary and transform the battered image that it has really had in recent times. In terms of the other bit, if you look at the order, but after I speak with you, the business committee is still meeting. They have not fashioned out exactly what they are going to be doing yet in terms of maybe the ensuing week or possibly this particular sitting. And so they are waiting for that meeting to be concluded. And when it's concluded, we'll get to see a firm way forward. But then, I mean, a lot of bills, especially financial bills and others, especially as the finance minister is before the IMF now. The country is now enjoying the IMF deal. Some more issues regarding the finances would be coming back to Parliament.
Right then, Komla Kuche is a parliamentary affairs correspondent speaking to us with details as to what to expect in Parliament. The Business Committee, like you mentioned, is still a meeting to outline what the House will be engaged in all throughout this week and next week as well, and we'll be getting a lot more details as and when they come through. Let's talk school feeding now, because the caterers, they are bent on receiving minimum 2 cedis as grants per child following the meeting yesterday with the gender minister. My colleague Grace Hamwajiman has the rest of the story.
The minister has assured these caterers should start receiving their monies from June 6.
The money by tomorrow night should hit your accounts. Everything has been done. So you receive your money tomorrow night, I assure you. So I will plead with you to go back and then continue your cooking. And then you have also tabled your grievances. We'll take it on board and we'll try to address them.
President of the caterers says they are satisfied with the government's willingness to release their funds as soon as possible.
We are assuring our members that very soon the money will hit the accounts, as our minister has said, and the president has assured us that 1 cedi 20 pesos is just a proposal. As we are moving along, they will do something about it.
The meeting was, however, inconclusive of the proposed 1 cedi 20 pesos, as the caterers say the amount is woefully inadequate.
No, we did not agree on the 1 cedi 20 pesos. We let her understand that it's not enough. Maybe 3 cedis will do. And even if it will come down and it's 2 cedis minus tax, it will be okay. Because even on 1 cedi 20 pesos or 3 cedis, they will still take tax out of it. It's illegal not to pay tax in Ghana. So if they pay you that amount, you will still pay tax.
Well, we'll be monitoring whether these monies have hit the account of the caterers or not. Grace Asari Ajiman, Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, Akua.
Right then, Grace Hamwajiman with details from that meeting yesterday, and we'll be getting a lot more if you stay with us here on 3FM 92.7. The Fulani community in Ghana, they've bemoaned the increased spate of incessant attacks on their members. CEO of the Jatike Center for Human Security, Adib Sani, is concerned the Fulani community, when made to feel marginalized in society, would breed social injustice, and members could avail themselves to be recruited by violent extremist. Stanley Blow is at a news conference that's been organized. Let's get some details from him. Stanley, exactly what do they say when they say that there's been increased incessant attacks on them?
So the Fulani community has been speaking to the media, and for them, they have stamped up attacks that had actually taken place over the last 3 years and across the country, and they have come to the conclusion that the attack has been too many on Fulani communities, because they alluded to the fact that anytime a crime is being committed in a particular community inhabited or where they know that Fulanis are part of that community or that jurisdiction, they actually blame that crime on the Fulani community, and they take advantage of that situation to attack the community. They alluded to, they mentioned some communities, including Mami Krobo in the eastern region. They mentioned Sirigu in the upper east region. They mentioned a community close to Yendi in the northern region, and a whole lot. And so they were thinking that it's about time the state authorities would ensure that policies and rules of the country work so that the incessant attacks on Fulani extractions will be minimized. And then other issues that are actually that also came up has to do with the fact that for the communities, they know that most of the issues that often bring about the conflict has to do with the fact that cattle that the Fulani herdsmen to pretend over or take them for grazing do destroy farms of indigenes, and then the indigenes mobilize, or the youth of that jurisdiction mobilize to come and attack the community. For this, on the back of this issue, the Fulani community is actually proposing that a community made up of stakeholders from the assembly, security agencies, the Fulani community, and the indigenes should be established so that whenever issues of cattle destroying farmlands or crops are being recorded, they would resort to this community for a compensation to be done instead of going about attacking people of Fulani descent.
Stanley Blew there with the details of that news conference. That's how we end this afternoon's edition of the Bulletin here on 3FM 92.7. As always, a lot more news if you log on to 3news.com. I am Eric Mawuena Egbeta.
A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us on Business Daily on 3FM 92.7. My name is Nana Akua Mensah Aborampah. And coming up this afternoon, poor borrowing and poor debt management habits are the bane of Ghana's economy. That's according to Professor John Gachi and Director of Business Operations at Dalex Finance, Joe Jackson, laments over the increasing interest rates on treasury bills. We have all the details in the next 10 minutes. Please stay. Let's get to the detail as economist John Gachi has expressed deep worry about government's debt management practices. Now, this follows concerns raised by respected economist Kwame Pianim that proceeds from Eurobonds have over the years been used to pay salaries and compensation and not for productive activities. And speaking in an interview with Free Business, Professor John Gachi said successive governments must desist from such practices.
Renowned economist Kwame Pianim expressed concerns about how proceeds from Eurobonds have been dissipated over the years. According to him, governments have over the years mismanaged the funds.
You do not borrow on the Eurobonds and use it to pay salaries. You know, this started, it never happened before. Yalsafo Mafo's time and then Banridu's time went to the Eurobond to set a ceiling for government bond, for a floor for private sector to be able to borrow on the Eurobond. We didn't go in to open the gate for people to go and borrow money to pay salaries. And this is what happened after the MPP left office. NDC came in, they saw Eurobonds, and then started borrowing Eurobonds to pay salaries and recurrent expenditures. But you have to raise enough money locally to pay salaries, your public service, because you need it.
Dean of the University of Cape Coast Business School, Professor John Gachi, attributes the phenomenon to bad debt management practices, which he thinks must be halted.
When we borrow, we need to indicate what we call value for borrowing. And that value for borrowing might be seen in the asset generated by the borrowing. As it is, if we borrow let's say 2 billion, it is very difficult to say that 50% of that has gone to create asset for the country.
And that was a desk report. And Director of Business Operations at Dalex Finance, Joe Jackson, has lamented the increasing interest rates on T-bills is worrying and does not imply increasing investor confidence. For the first time in 4 weeks, government's treasury bills were oversubscribed by over 300 million cedis at an interest rate of 21%. And speaking to 3 Business, Joe Jackson said the current trend is disturbing.
Investors are still demanding a lot more money than we think they should. The market is still liquid. So people are still offering to buy T-bills. But the market sentiment is not as good as it should be. So even with the oversubscription, the rates are high. Improved investor sentiment should reduce price. It should reduce the yields, not increase the yields. In any case, rates of almost 20% for 91 days and 23% for 182 days make nonsense of the domestic debt exchange program. And it's still too high for the government.
Director of Business Operations at Dalex Finance, Joe Jackson there. And on the back of that, government is targeting to raise over 2.6 billion cedis this week following last week's oversubscription. The amount is largely financing maturing bills of over 2.5 billion. This will be issued across the 91-day to 364-day treasury bills. Market analysts are projecting higher yields due to the higher yields on Bank of Ghana's bills, which could squeeze some liquidity from the markets. Last week, the government raised 2.41 billion money market auction on robust investor demand, about 16% oversubscription of the targeted amount. And let's see how government would fare with raising over 2.6 billion cedis this week following that oversubscription. And the former power minister, Dr. Kwabena Donkor, has criticized the World Bank country director of Ghana for his comments that the former Mahama administration signed the most expensive agreement in the energy sector. He insists the country director should have focused on the deteriorating exchange rate, which has affected power purchase agreements.
The exchange rate has so deteriorated between 1st January 2017 and as at yesterday, the exchange rate had almost tripled, the cedi to the dollar. And when you have that kind of situation, you are going to have a situation where the domestic tariff will not keep up with the external tariff. And I was expecting the World Bank country director to rather address the inefficiencies in the economy leading to currency instability, which impacts our tariffs. But when a country director picks one regime and inaccurately attributes all the challenges of the sector to that regime, he's being partisan and he's not helping build the consensus, build the agreement we need to move forward in the power sector.
And that was a former power minister, Dr. Kwabena Donkor. Meanwhile, Executive Director for the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Benjamin Boakye, has also been reacting to the World Bank country director's assertion, indicating transparency in negotiations is key.
I'm not sure he mentioned any regime. It was a broad statement of the kind of power purchase agreements that we have signed. But I think that the energy sector issues are way beyond, the IPPs and the contracts that we signed with them. And given that, even though they capture all of that in the tariff and we are still paying from the budget, it clearly tells you that there are issues beyond just the IPPs and the power contracts. So I think the conversation is how do we work within the World Bank and the other stakeholders to ensure that the real inefficiencies and the problems of the power sector can be addressed. And in the interview, I heard him mention a couple of them, in under recoveries, which is a major concern. I mean, the Ministry of Finance even projects that between now and 2026, the total under recoveries in the sector, if nothing is done, will be about 97 billion Ghana cedis. That is worrisome, and we need to really find a way around it. And it is fundamentally the fact that ECG is not performing. The situation as we have it now is that if you give ECG power of 1 million Ghana cedis, they can actually recover only 500,000. And you can't do that kind of business and survive.
You heard the executive director of ASEP, Benjamin Boache, there, ending it for Business Daily this afternoon. Remember, when you log on to 3news.com, we have more business news updates. My name is Nana Akua Mensah Aborampah. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your lunch, and Black Rasta joins you shortly. Good afternoon.